Yeah, I got all the credit and none of the hard work.
Uh,
Hold on, I think we can't hear
yeah, Wolf. I don't think they can hear you
Wolf
in the
and
chat.
Matt.
Well, I heard Matt, but I can't hear Wolf.
Oh, me.
Oh, that's not good. You've been doing this whole intro.
Okay. Well, just to give a
Okay.
quick little intro for the stream, we're just doing a portfolio review of some of the people from my community, and then we're going to be going over a teaser kind of make for the trailer, and then we're gonna then take questions and anything like that. Sorry, I can hear myself right now, which is really obnoxious. But just to start, Matt, do you want to give yourself a little intro?
Yeah, for sure. So, like Wolf said, I haven't been in Heart Machine too long, but my name is Matt Graczyk. I've been in environment arts for almost 13, 14 years now. And yeah, I'm here to hopefully provide some useful critique, some insight, and just to try to help people as best I can. So, looking forward to seeing your work and, all of that.
Yeah, perfect. And give myself an intro. I've been a senior environment artist at Heart Machine for, I don't know, maybe 5 years almost now. Did Solar Ash, and I also did a little bit of work on Breaker for a while, but I've mostly been on Possessors for the last year and a half so for the project, so it's really exciting to see it get announced and actually exist for the world, so that was fun. Great. Well, the first person that we're going to be doing today is Nicholas Green.
Nicholas Green, yes.
Did you guys end the stream?
No, stream is up, as far as I can see.
Yep, no issues with me.
Okay, yeah, if we're good, yeah, let's get rolling. Wolf, would you like to control and then I can jump in? Oh, you have it already. Great. Okay, amazing.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Nick, if you're ready to roll. Oh, do you prefer Nicholas or Nick?
Nick's fine.
Okay, cool. What are your pronouns?
He, him, please.
Okay, sounds good. Great. And so you answered a few of our questions to, apply to this. You want to give us a little bit of rundown about yourself, how many years you've been working in 3D, like what your kind of goals are, what kind of studios you want to work at, any particular pieces you wanted us to look at.
For sure, yeah. So, let's see. So I've been doing 3D, not really in like a professional capacity, I guess, but I've been taking it seriously, I would say, for about like 3 or so years. I've been doing it as a hobby for a little longer, I'd say around 5. I just recently, this past May, actually graduated from a game design program at a local university. So yeah, I'm mostly at the moment just working on my portfolio and sending out a bunch of applications and trying to find some work in the industry at the moment.
Cool. Do you have a preference of like what sort of jobs you're looking for? Because I know your portfolio definitely screams more stylized, but it's good to know where you would like to head or what sort of things you'd like to work on so we can give valid critique.
Yeah, so definitely leaning a bit more towards stylized stuff. I've been kind of hitting a wall with that because it's like when people think of like stylized 3D, there's like usually just like really like 1 or 2 stylistic choices that'll like stand out as like, I don't know, like traditionally stylized stuff, but I'm not also like super interested in that either. So I've been kind of trying to play around to sort of like find a middle ground between not like stylized and realistic, I guess, but more on the side of stylized, but something that's more, I guess, like interesting to me personally.
Yeah, okay, that's definitely a good way to think about it. Yeah, I guess something that popped in my head before we start looking at when you say in between of, stylized, realistic. Let's be frank, I hate the word stylized because there's a vast amount of approaches to like what sort of visual direction you want, and just saying stylized could mean anything from World of Warcraft to paper anime to a mobile game, and it's hard to find something specific when you refer to everything that's not AAA high density realistic as stylized. So just something to consider in the future. It can be a bad shorthand and limit your brain space, So it's usually good to be like, this is the sort of art direction I'd like to aim for, whether it's realistic-ish or other traits of it. So just that's just a pet peeve of mine. So it's good to call that out for all of you that we're reviewing today. So
See, that's funny. I call myself a stylized artist, so yeah.
there's nothing
I guess
wrong
I
with
come
it.
from like
There's nothing
come
wrong
from
with
a
it.
different perspective. I guess I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to being a better word for it. I just can't really think of anything. A pet peeve of mine more is when people say low poly artists. That's because that's not necessarily true for like a lot of these different art styles and everything like that. Like, I remember a lot of the feedback that we got for Solar Ash was that with the style and everything like that, they assumed that it would cost less or anything like that, and it was less work. And when it comes to more stylized work, it's actually really difficult to figure out how to simplify shapes correctly. And I think it's like a really beautiful process. It's kind of like you're the puzzle maker and you're trying to make something that's interesting and fun and recognizable to play. So you have to like backwards compatible from realism to how much detail you can take away with it still reading properly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Anyways, enough vamping. Let's jump into it. I wanted to talk about S42 because I'm assuming this is your most recent environment. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Do you have
Did
any
you want-
background or anything on this piece for
Yeah.
like
Yeah, so mostly I was looking to make an interior environment for like portfolio piece. I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to go for a lot of it. But I did have this like kind of spaceship like RV inspired type thing that I had like a design for already from like a previous art competition I was part of. Um, and I'd kind of been meaning to do an interior for a while and sort of took this as like the push I needed to get started, I guess. So all of these renders are in Unreal 5, I believe. And I use Blender generally for like most of the modeling and like asset production.
Let's see. Some general top of the head thoughts because there's a few things I wanted to talk about. Just the general like presentation, lighting, and like consistency of detail. I think are some of the points I want to hit on. First off, I think you picked a good choice of having a self-contained environment where you could try to fill it out with whatever characters or people's stuff because it tells you a lot about somebody, what they have around, what they keep, what they don't, how they keep their space. So that's a good start. It's a lot of people tend to go a little too big, so I think that's good energy. If you had concept art, I would love to see it. If you're kind of just doing it live, that's my guess. I can see maybe it was a little tough to make something more coherent. So something to consider in the future. Even if you're not a good sketcher, try to kind of start at that state and like try to come up with something compositionally or just like some ideas that will guide you toward a more coherent and consistent vision. Because when you just jump into modeling, it's fun, but rapidly you find that there are problems you can't easily solve without being able to see the project as a whole. And the best way to do that is to start small, start gestural, and just figure out, well, I know what space I want to make, but what's the stuff inherent within it? What's the visual perspectives? What are the angles I want to take the camera from? Because that's composition with the pictures you show us. So just consider that for your next one, I guess. Not saying there's anything like terribly wrong here. It's just it feels like an architectural project less than like a creative space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, definitely like illustration concept art stuff is definitely an area that I can improve on. So I'll definitely, especially with like some of my more recent projects, of like stuff that is modeled strongly off like reference material, it's like a night and day difference in my workflow. So I can definitely see that being like more important going forward.
Yeah, for sure. I've got some more things, but Wolf, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. I'll share my screen instead. We're both looking at the same thing, but hey.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
So the major things that I'm seeing here is, yeah, the lighting's a little bit washed. I would love to see, you have a directional light coming in, but it's not really being utilized in the space, where I would like to see like some, either use it more, where you can have like it's shining in a little bit more, and like having like that kind of light hitting the tabletops or anything like that, or even just having some like god rays coming in with like, I don't know, some sort of like, it feels a bit like more foggy or heavier atmosphere in here. I'd like to see that utilized in the atmosphere and the directional light a little bit more. So either I would get rid of the influence from the directional light from the exterior, or accentuate it more. Right now it's just not really giving quite that dynamic look that I would be looking for. Right here it's starting to hit a little bit more, and here I just wish there was a little bit more atmosphere, like giving some attention to it. And I'd like to see it like at a little bit more of a dynamic angle. Right now it seems like it's just straight coming through the side. Like having it from, you know, a 3/4 perspective might give you some more like cool influence. You can see like a little bit here or something like that too. Also a major thing that I would see is that with the colors, it's very like cold blue for the directional light, and then everything has like a yellow on the interior, but I would probably skew them a little bit more together. Like it's very saturated yellow with like a very recognizable blue. Like I feel like I would probably lean the colors to be a little bit less saturated from one to the other. It's when you're thinking about the color wheel or anything like that, I would want to like, if I wanted the yellow to be the primary light source, I would have that on a higher saturation and then cool down the blue a little bit more, like, you know, less saturated level, and like maybe skew it a little bit towards green or purple instead of going with the hard blue. I think it'll complement it a little bit better, instead of it seems like they're kind of fighting each other at the moment. And this is a critique that I usually give to most people, and I'm seeing it here, but I see some stuff that actually helps. You see how you have this nice like variance in texture up here, and you're doing it in kind of like a chunky way, where it's like this whole shape has like an influence to it, like right here. This is like a nice big shape of like influence or like different texture. I would love to see a little bit more variance in things, where this is pretty consistent when it comes to the noise on everything like that. I would say also the normal maps are way too high at the moment. I would want to see a little bit more variance in it, like negative space breaks in the level of influence. Like you could have like little sections that are like less influential than others, or like higher influence, and that's how you can actually like highlight edges of wear and tear and have it be less consistent. There was another section that I ended up seeing this in that caught my eye, and here's like another example of that, where the normal mass is a little bit too high. I would even like turn up some specularity on some of the stuff. Like some of it's pretty flat and same when it comes to the material. I'd like to see that probably be tuned down, and or like the noise level is very, very high, meaning that like the texture is really, really small. I feel like it should be you should scale the texture up, or like have just less influence to very little influence on something like that. I think that's the stuff that's on the top of my head right now. Like here's a good example of where to use noise detail. It's like up in this corner. This is a good place to use noise detail, like around like the edges where, it has that dirt. You want the dirt to like make sense for where it's sitting in it. It seems like there isn't really quite a rhyme or a reason for how it's so heavy right here, but not over here. Like I'd like to either go one way or the other with it, where I would have like the noise like kind of like stick to the corners for this kind of thing, and I wouldn't have like too much level of like consistency with it too. Like you want like little breaks in it, like even just like a small amount down here instead of having, every corner filled to the brim. But this kind of like detail would be good just around the edges, because that's where like dirt's probably gonna collect. I think that's everything that's on top of my head right now. Well, one last thing that I would say too, sorry, Matt, I'm just rambling.
You're good.
Is if you aren't planning on doing much with the exterior for here, I don't know how necessary it is to show it. I would either use a cube map or make some stylized version of like a window, or even just, flatten it out. Like if you're not going to show anything on the other side, you don't really need to use transparency on it. And you can still have the light influence through it if you make it a plane that is like has only the normals on one side. So you can get that light influence that you want from the skylight or anything. But either I would dedicate some time to building out the exterior a little bit more, or I would remove the influence of it altogether and just use a cube mat or something else that's already put together, instead of you having to like go out and do the entire environment outside if it's meant to be an interior piece.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I want to move on from this piece, but do you mind switching me really quick for one last little bit?
Yep.
Sweet. Also, people might not be able to see your sketch overs, so just in the future, I'm not sure what's up.
Okay, cool.
Last bit. This is your best angle. This is your best shot. Finding your best one can be tough. I think you should remember to start from your blockout period to be like, this is a good place for the camera to be. Block it down and adjust from there as you go. But this is great, but what's really laying it down is one thing. Yeah, Wolf said. There's just nothing out here. This is almost your focal point. It's so close to this interesting thing, and this is all lit up, casting this nice glow. I know it looks like a football diagram here, but there's absolutely nothing to see out there. So either you need to put something semi-interesting or at least not distracting there, or you need to cover it up, maybe drape a banner, and then have some light coming through with some diffusion on the material, and make sure and have that be the dominant light, warming this area up from the cool, sterile interior or whatever your story is, So that's a big point here, where this camera angle could be a lot better. And then from there, it's like little things that are letting you down as well. Like, I'm not sure where these are coming from. They're bleeding through some crack. There's no reason to have those, There's a clear evidence of low textile density where you can see this blurry texture because these don't look modular or they don't have enough texture space. And the edges are hard. So you can see also the light map is not resolving very well. They're split. So having this right in the front is really aggressively weird when you see that. So, breaking some edges with a little bevel to catch the light a little better, even one bevel, really good, especially for stylized. Chunk it up a little,
Chunk it up.
Chunk it up. A good rule of thumb for stylized stuff, depending on what you're doing, I know that word is coming in, is to say 25 to 50% larger than real life, which a lot of this scene is. But then I look at this and I see it's not quite there. So just consider that, if you're looking at something, make it a little bigger. That's all I got to say on the rest of this one. Would love to move on so we don't have to nitpick a single piece of yours.
It looks really good, though.
Yeah, it's a good piece. I think your next one, growing from that, is going to be really good. So keep at that for sure.
Thanks.
I wanted to talk really quick about one of your other environments, either the Cathedral, preferably, if you're okay with that. But if it's too old, I can talk about Weapon Props or Nautilus. So, what's your preference?
Sure, yeah. I would say the cathedral's fine. It's probably the last like large scale environment that I've worked on other than the previous one.
So, immediately, this is something Wolf also kind of gave you some crit on. Your lighting needs a lot of work. Granted, this is not a color calibrated monitor, but you can't see anything, man. You put all this detail into these props, which we can see if we go down. I can't see any of it. It's just not resolving. So in this scene,
For sure.
I can tell that your my screen. Sorry, it was my snip. I can tell that your textures are not too dark or anything, which is usually one reason for muddy lighting when we're coming to PBR stuff, is that your values have to be of a certain value. These look good. Like, this isn't like dark brown or dark gray. This is pretty good. That's within range, like your metals are resolving correctly. These look good in this environment, in this, test lighting environment. But you go up to here and it's like, where to go? So I don't know if you're using light maps. You definitely need to raise the ambient light by some amount, which is usually going to be a cool blue, especially for this scene. You need to consider adding fill lights, which would be basically, I keep closing snip. It's such a dumb idea. Fill lights are basically non-motivated or semi-motivated light sources. So when I say motivated, this candlestick, that there's light coming from that clearly. There's a point light coming from this, especially all these. This is a motivated light source casting these shapes down there, but there's really nothing else to fill in the space. And yes, we can lean on light bouncing being baked into the light maps as one way to do it, but it's slow. It's hard to iterate that way. It's a pain in the butt. Not as cheap, but a perfectly effective way, which is always used, is put in little fill lights. Usually, it might be a little point, something like this, roughly in the space. I like to use spots as much as possible because they're cheaper. Point lights are perfectly fine, and set them to no shadows, preferably, or at least try to move them so the shadows aren't conflicting, and very broad and just enough to bring up the value of these like really dark areas, and that will help a lot. And then consider like this angle is a good, decent angle, but there's no volumetrics. There's nothing telling me there's a strong light source that casts these strong lighting influences in this scene, and it feels flat as a result, and it really kills your focal point. Like, I should be looking at this intricate work up here, and it's just nothing drawing me. There's no lines guiding the eye. So that's most of what this.
Maybe if there was more moonlight coming through, maybe it would work. I don't know. Like, I'm not a professional at this.
No, it's of course. I mean, listen, everybody's got room to grow. It's not even the strength of the light source. So cranking up the value of the projected light is not going to do it. You need to either add some sort of fog influence, whether it be faked with the material, like fog cards, or like more like a cone would be the idea. Or you need to look into a more flexible fog volume type of setting, which Unreal has a multitude of solutions that are perfectly good. So basically, you could do a cone. There's plenty of resources online to figure out how to do some sort of like, fog material texture type of dealio that essentially is like using the Fresnel of the mesh. It fades out to the edges, and you can put in a miss value in there, and it will, physically give you a lightning in the space. It's not a replacement for like a dynamic system, but it's really good. So this one, everything else looks okay. There's some things I could say about props, but the lighting is the thing killing this. And it'll look like an entirely different scene if you do some work there. So
For sure.
Thanks for
Yeah,
the
my
feedback, Matt. We do have to move on.
yes, I was just about to say I talked too long, so I hope that was helpful. I know we talked a lot, so taking notes might be encouraged, but
Just to give a follow-up just before we move on, is this tool I use so much, Lazy God Ray, it's worth the $7. You can use it in every single scene. It's just a really great like fake God Ray tool to like throw into any scene. So I highly recommend it. Like, I put it wherever I can at any point in time. So I would, if you can afford it or anything like that, this is something that I would highly recommend.
okay. we're gonna move on to Ashley Wee, and we got to be a little quicker. I think both of us tend to go a little long. So, Ashley, do you have any specific scenes you want to create? So I was going to talk about Temple and Chimer predominantly. So
Sounds good.
sweet. Okay. I'm assuming you're focusing on 3D game art environment work predominantly.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So to start with, I think this is a pretty effective scene. I think you chose a really, once again, a limited space and executed it pretty well. There's definitely stuff I'd improve and I would consider, but it's a good scene. It's definitely has some stuff that's not bringing it up to, yeah, I'd say, but like professional level right now. But it certainly is strong. You know, there's good stuff, and I really like that you showed your reference. Some of the main things that are glaring right away is what you'd call texel res, texel density, or whatever. I don't know what you're building all these textures at necessarily in size, but I'm seeing a lot of inconsistencies that are pretty obvious at first glimpse, and those can really, it's a technical consideration, but it can really let stuff down. So one thing in particular is this tiling. That's a terrible draw. This tiling brick. It's probably decent enough, but it doesn't seem to clearly match what's going on. Like say here, here, and on this guy. Those look like they're maybe double the resolution of this, or they have some sort of breakup, like detail texture that this does not have, and it's pretty inconsistent and it feels a little weird. And then the next part of that is I look at this really pretty noisy rock, which is already a little on the edge of too noisy, and then I look at the embossing, the sculpt here, and it's same over here. The face, it's just flat. It's like flat enough. It doesn't look like there's a normal map on there, and I would expect that to be sculpted in and made like 3D in a really bold and dramatic way. You know, just like these cool things pushing out and stuff. You know, and that would play with the lighting so much better. So if you have something this big, this detailed that we want to look at, you should probably consider building it with geometry. So that's what I would say. Do you have anything, Wolf?
Yeah. So taking a look, I'm realizing now that you guys can't see my screen unless you're watching the stream. So,
Whoops.
good to know for now. I really don't want to mess with anything, so I'm just gonna leave that, and sorry about that. So, so taking a look at this, I think this is like a really like solid scene. I would say that yeah, the colors are a little bit same to me. Like I would like a little bit more variation and break in the noise. Like that's the major thing that I always end up seeing is that there's a lot of noise that doesn't have enough reason to be there. But I don't want to harp on that too bad. Sorry if you have to look at the stream to be able to see this, but something that I like to do is I would make a brick texture, like a brick asset that matches this too. So you can add little like variants into the wall itself because it feels and looks very flat. So if I open up Maya, sorry for anybody who can't see what's going on right now, but you know, and I'm making like a wall or something like that, I will have the texture itself on there, but then I'll also make like a brick that I can just like place randomly and be able to like stick in the wall to add like some raised like sections, like have it like in there a little bit more, and it'll add like some like nice sections where the light ends up catching, and it just like a little bit of that kind of detail work can go a really long way with adding some just like complementing the lighting. So something like that with a brick texture on top is like super great. And then if you want to go the next level to it is add some like edge break to it, and you can end up with a really clean, like nice, I know all of you are going to hate this, but this is how I do all of my edge work for anybody who's curious.
What's wrong with this? Nothing wrong with that.
And I never, but adding that little bit of like edge can like help so much. And as long as you keep on like a decent plane, you can go like that and mix it up a little bit. But it can do
A good. Sorry.
Yeah. No, yeah, it can
A
do
good.
a lot.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. A really good reference point for this sort of detail, which I think we got to move on from. Sorry. It's Dark Souls 3 is a good point, and any of the FromSoft games, which do a lot of destruction. Take a look at their ground, take a look at their walls. You will see endless tiny little bricks aligned with texture bricks. And sometimes they're built into the floor wall piece, and sometimes they're like wolfed separate. Both are viable and good approaches. It's a big factor, and honestly, you should always be trying to think, how can I add geometry in a way that's not repetitive. Yeah,
Repetitive. There we go.
repetitive. Yes,
Yeah.
especially for things that are not in perfect working conditions. Something to think of for everybody.
Yeah.
I got a little more feedback. We could probably get 1 or 2, 3 minutes at most here, so I
Go
can
ahead.
switch to me.
Mhm.
So this one is the Kyber Palace scene, which I think is also I think it achieved your goals. I think there's some pretty effective stuff. I think this scale, here, let me stop here, of things is kind of interesting. It reminds me of like a GameCube RPG sort of, where things are like bigger, like the characters might be a little bigger than you expect, and the world itself is like a little chunkier than you expect. And if that's what you're aiming at, that's great. If you were trying to do like a more realistic like scale of elements thing, it wasn't. I think that's something to consider. Like a person might be like real would be like this sort of like chunky aesthetic would be like big dude, like wider dude, kind of like that. And that's what this feels like. It's a little toy box. So hopefully you're intending this. And if you were thinking like this is more like a real average normal person, things are a little bigger than I feel like they are, and part of that is your camera. It might be a little wide of the lens, so maybe consider shooting from farther back with a more narrow camera. So I like to use the cinematic camera in Unreal. It's really helpful. You can just set it, forget it, to something like a 35 millimeter or an IMAX or whatever. It's really helpful.
Great. I have a
Yeah,
few
and last thing is
thoughts on-
I see a lot of. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
if you
Go
don't
for
mind,
it,
I'll
Wolf. We have the
jump
same
in.
feedback.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is you did a good job with doing storytelling with the lighting. I would
Mhm.
do a little bit of changes to add to that. And the first thing that I would do, just like to kind of like on a similar thing when it comes to scale, is I would raise the windows to be taller. Like right now they like feel like awkwardly short. So I would raise it a little bit higher. Same thing with the doorway. I just feel like something that's a little bit more elongated would complement the look of the space a little bit more. And the nice thing you get when you raise that window up is you're going to get a higher up influence of the light coming down. And so you're going to be able to get like a better focal point on that arrow there if you raise it up a little bit. Right now it almost feels like there's a tangent for where the arrow is landing, where it's just like it's on the edge of the lighting influence. Also, I'd say that it's a little bit blown out. I would want to like take it down a little bit and maybe have it be a little bit less white, have a little bit more color influence to it, is like a major thing that I see. So, but I'm gonna let you, Matt. You had a thought, so.
Yeah, definitely what Wolf's saying. Really good. Remember, you can always change your assets after if something isn't quite working, and you should consider every asset in the context of what you're trying to do with the scene. You don't have to build it once and then it's got to be that way forever. But yeah, no. Also, to call out the lighting earlier, this scene has really good fill. The ambient lighting is soft and not too aggressive, and it helps focus on the details we want to see because there is a stronger, like value on certain elements. Not perfect, but it's certainly things are visible. Although I do see some issues of contact shadows and lack of shadowing. There's no clear direction most of the light's from, so these things feel like they're hovering a little. So bake it a little more and put in something with some shadows that these will cast from that feel, more accurate. Sometimes it's not physically accurate, and you have to fake it.
Yeah, you really want
Yeah,
to get
it's an
that ambient occlusion tuned up pretty
Yes.
high. I feel like that's especially with stylized work like those contact shadows. I think tuning up the ambient occlusion and giving it a little bit of a color influence can do a lot with making things feel like they're really grounded.
Yep. So otherwise, or overall, good. I think you had a good grasp of how to build modularly and are in a really great place. Your next scene's going to be good. Also, think you're really good at texturing. These are really strong. There's stuff I would say that still needs work, but like the designer work you're doing, it's good. You should keep pushing yourself that way because it's an extra skill that you could have. A person I'd look at for that sort of work is Javier Perez. He's a Sony, their in-house studio material artist. He's very good. He's a good teacher. You should look into his work. He's got a lot of breakdowns. So Javier Perez with a J.
Yeah, I love him.
Yes, good. Yeah, he's good. So otherwise, yeah, I think we should keep moving. So great job, Ashley.
I'd love to do one last thing, if that's okay. The
Not my call.
yeah. So the last thing that I would say about your modular kit is that you've got a lot of your top detail lines up nicely on the edges and everything like that. I think it's getting a little lost on the bottom, where this line, I wish it followed through onto this piece as well. Like, I would love to have, it doesn't feel like these pieces are built together that much. I think it's okay that there's a break here, though I do wish there's some sort of influence down here, or some sort of edge to it. But I would love to see that detail kind of follow through on the bottom and make sure that all those pieces kind of fit together, because it feels like it kind of goes to nowhere right here. And I kind of would, instead of having all the detail down here, I would raise it up and have those lines follow through with the wall as well. So that's the last thing.
Yeah, great note. That's a really good thing to think about.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again, Ashley. I hope this was helpful.
Thanks, this was awesome.
Perfect. Great. Sorry, we're going to try and keep time a little bit better. So we've got...
Wolf, do you want to start on Elizabeth Picado?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm going to pull it up. I have your screen up.
Well, I'll start then.
Okay, go ahead.
Anyways, hey, how's it going, Elizabeth? Do you have anything in particular you want us to look at? Because I was going to focus on just 2 or 3 at most here.
Yeah, so I go by Liz.
I'm
Call
sorry.
me Liz if you want. No, it's fine. And then if you want, you can focus on either temple ruins or shipwreck. Those are kind of the 2 most recent full environments I did.
Sick. Okay, cool. I will touch over on this one real quick. I would not put anything in your portfolio that's in development, which I was looking at first. I'm like, I don't think this would be up here. It doesn't look like it's baked fully. And I saw, oh, this is currently in development. Don't put it up. It's the first thing I see. It's not good yet, and I know you know that. So just wait till it's, like I said, fully baked. So,
Okay.
yeah, so you don't want to add pieces to your portfolio that just to have more on there. I'm guilty of this myself. I've got some that are split up a little too much, but you want to make sure every piece is very representative. So that sometimes means pulling down stuff that's too old. So, anyways, yeah, Shipwreck's pretty cool. There's some stuff about lighting and composition that I'd like to discuss briefly. I'm sure Wolf will as well. She's a superstar about that stuff. But I guess what I'd start just as this isn't nitpicky. This is actually big detail, but the first thing I see that really bugs me that is just, it's hard to ignore, is this rock and this sword. They're clearly supposed to be the most important element in the scene, even ignoring this big hero prop. And we got this thing, which is, it's got some rocky stuff. There's some issues I see with planar shapes being messy, and it just overall not very detailed very well, as well as these decals, which are a little out of they're very dark and they don't really read as a crack very well. and then you have this wall right next to it, and these ones, and these significantly higher noise, mostly like kind of mid-scale rhythm as opposed to large shapes and then tiny little noise detail. Whereas this is entirely large details and like large. I always forget the word, but basically it's all significantly large shapes. Absolutely no mid or tertiary small details, and they look like they're from different games. And then I look at this one, it's like it's not a good rock. I'm sorry, it's just not, and it's really bringing things down a lot because I'm supposed to look at this. So I did want to talk about rock a little bit.
Really? I would say
yeah,
I like the
this is-
color and like the influence when it comes to the lighting that's coming off of it. I think that that is probably helping it a lot to you know, reach a higher level. I would say like the forms are soft, like you were saying, and stuff like that. But the color feels great. I love that bounce light. That feels nice. So
Yeah, so I'm not saying you're bad at rock. It's just this is not your best rock. Since it is a hero asset, I'm going to nitpick it. I think here's a person you should consider. Let me find.
do you have a rock person?
Not my person, but why can I not get it? Okay, you may just have to look them up. Pro is being weird to me. Wait, here we go. Her name is Ivana Lichschlager, which I can post. This is her approach. This is the video that is closest to the way I work. Timestamp maybe 29 or so. And she starts from base level planar shapes. She does the very realistic stuff, but this applies for all rocks. And this is ZBrush. You can do Maya or whatever else. But just cut, make planar shapes, create an interesting composition with your rock first. So do it from one angle, do it from another angle, rotate it around, do more. And you can see how it clearly becomes something that's like interesting as opposed to kind of trying to trim dynamic every edge, which can introduce a lot of softness that is just hard to clean up. So start from something simple. You can model this too. You can Boolean it. You don't have to get crazy, but like this is one approach. This is how I like to start rocks.
Yeah, that's probably, I
There's
do
a-
the same thing when it comes to that. Like, I start very similarly. There's also a set of ZBrush brushes that if you
See,
like that kind of
fine.
thing, is,
Yep.
there's a set of brushes that has, God, what's it called? The orb brushes? If you
Yes.
know what those are?
Those are-
I feel like
Those
everyone...
are mandatory.
What was that?
Those are mandatory.
Yeah, those orb brushes are amazing. There's a an edge brush that's in there that after you, if you're going for like a stylized look, you can do the simplest thing when it comes to cut all of those edges like that was just shown in the video, and then just use that one like edge orb brush all along like some of like the connecting parts, like the, you know, I don't know how to describe it, like really harsh edges. You can use it there, and it just adds that little bit of like beveled detail, and that can honestly take you to almost end product.
Yeah, you don't need as much as you think. This is a good example. This is really stylized rock. It has big forms, you know, large details, very mid ones like this, the cracks and some of the bigger chips, and small fine noise. For something this stylized, you don't always need that fine noise. You can big, mid, and there, so you can clearly see the difference between yours and this specific rock. Not to say yours is bad. I'm just saying it's not effective here. You can see the planar shapes. So, you know, I consider looking at her work. There's plenty of other people who do good stuff, but this thing is such a hero asset. It really bugged me. So, all right, I'll stop harping on rock. Wolf, if you'd like to.
Great. I'd love to go over there's something on the temple ruins that I talked about earlier that I feel like is relevant for you as well, if that's okay with going over that real quick. So I'm going to switch to my screen right now, so sorry if you want to be able to see it, you can go on the stream. But this piece right here, I love that you're actually using the brick thing that I was talking about before, where you have a brick piece that, you know, matches up and lines up with your piece. I just think that there's some placement that you can do that could be able to help it a lot more. You see that edge that you have here? Using that brick to cover up those edges is crucial. So what you're going to do is like you have like a few of that detail in there, but you're going to want to like take one of these pieces and use it to give that like edge detail like a home. And it'll cover up like where you have like really harsh stuff that you have going on. So like that's like a huge thing that I'm seeing right here, is that you want to use that to your advantage. It seems like it's a little bit randomly placed at the moment, and I would love them to be grouped a little bit better with the 3D models to complement it in the same way that you have it grouped in the texture itself. Like, it has really great grouping, and it feels like some of those like 3D bricks are just kind of shoved in there to give some detail, so you get the idea of it, but I'd like to see it overlaid in the same style that is in the texture, which is like a little bit of chunks here or there, like putting like 3 or 4 next to each other instead of just using like 1 in the wall. That's like a major thing that I was seeing. But I love this texture too, by the way. This is really nice. The only thing is, like, obviously that edge, like I was talking about, this feels very unsolved. The other thing I would say is the leaf style that you have with this texture is highly in contrast with the style that you have for your vine work that's on here. I would try and merge some of it better, match the color and the shapes a bit harder. So you have like a very clear, like, stylized, like, cute, like, leaf shape for the like main like, vines and stuff like that. But for the texture itself, it's kind of like a triangle style. So I would commit to one or the other and match the color as well.
Yeah, totally. I got 2 more minutes of notes. If you could, give me that.
And you're up.
Okay, so first off, good presentation. I think you've got a couple of really effective angles. You just don't know which are the good ones other than this. This is your first picture. Good choice. This one's not so bad. I think that would be a good 3rd pick. This one's being let down by the model, so I would put that lower or skip it. This is probably your best image of the set. This should be your first one. It does have some things I'd like to call out, but this is really good. Your lighting is also quite effective, although I wish the light wasn't coming from here and was instead coming from here. But Wolf called this out. These harsh edges. There's a trick. It's pretty old, but it's still extremely usable. You can use it on the round off edges. You can use it to hide damages. In this case, we need to hide the damaged edge. Essentially, I'll just spray over the thing. This is, oh wait, no, you can see that. This is being used in Fallout 3, so, old. You can see how this looks really detailed, but the edge is just a tiling texture on there, and what they do is they put a shell over the geometry with an alpha'd material. So, and you basically make a trim of just these details, and there's a hard alpha, and you just stick that over the edge. So when it looks, where's Snip Tool? Help me. What it looks like when you do that is basically take your final geometry and then make, a trim set and just kind of go boop, 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 boop. And it could be over the edge like that, or it could be wrapped fully over and follow the shape, and that has your alpha, which will blend effectively across here. So for damage areas, that's really the only way to do it. There's others, but you can sculpt it in or something, but for what you're doing, this is the right approach. So
yeah, the only other approach that I would maybe suggest for that is like an alternative to deal with that is taking the UVing approach, which is you can selectively do your UVs in a way that they break along the edge of where the bricks are lining up, so that you can have that edge going up and around, so that you can have it wrap fully around this edge without having to worry about having this be your line for UVs. You can have this going across be your line for UVs instead. So you can like stylize your UV breaking to match the texture instead of having it by the edge itself. So that's just an alternative as well. Cool.
Yeah, I think those are really effective. I think you're in a good place. Keep moving. Keep working the lighting the way you're doing. It's solid, and it could really sell your scene much more effectively than your modeling work if you do it right. So, good stuff.
Thank you.
All right, let's motor. Last person is.
All right. The last person is Ray, and they have written down their intro, so I'm going to read it out loud. I'm Ray, he, him, 24 years old, and been doing 3D since high school, but only took it seriously after graduating a 4-year computer science course. I was all over the place doing modeling and animation for both commercial and personal purposes. Eventually, I decided to go with environment and props path. My portfolio is not very updated at the moment. Matt saw it before, I think, but I couldn't get feedback from him, unfortunately, around that time. My portfolio is heavily stylized, I believe, but for the past couple of months, I've had the chance to work on a lot of AAA props and environments in a more realistic approach, and that helped me get into the industry more and explore more workflows. I would definitely appreciate your feedback regarding what I should add or remove from my portfolio that'll help me get exposed more into the games industry.
Okay.
So you're trying to go more
definitely-
AAA like realism now, or are you still trying to shoot for stylized, more like painterly kind of things that you have in your portfolio? I guess that'd be the first question to answer your question in regards to what you should take out or what you should add. So, I think they're in the chat. So.
You'd like to go for AAA more for now.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Your
I'm gonna let
portfolio is
Matt
not
handle
selling
that.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, your portfolio is just not telling me that. Your portfolio is telling me you want to do somewhere between WoW to mobile stylized to, something like that. So first start is you need to make a bunch more new stuff in that style. This is the only thing you have essentially that's close to that, and it's a small prop. And I've seen it before. It's decent. It's just not going to get you a job. There's errors I see anyways. You're baking, the little swoovity. That's a normal baking error where your edge need to be hardened on your low poly. So there's stuff like that I'm like, not great. So you need to have at least 2 decent environments in the quality bar and the style you're looking for. Ivana is another good person to look at. Again, she works primarily in that stuff, even though the games she worked on have a stylistic bent that is not like full realism. But I would look at her work. This is really the only thing I can critique based off of that, and I can give you a little presentation tips too. Honestly, don't put something from a tutorial in your portfolio. There used to be a joke that the same like 3D total tutorial of a busted up column and a fire hydrant was in every junior's portfolio, because it was, and then everybody has a sci-fi corridor, which, let's be honest, I have too. It just doesn't. I'm sorry to say, it just doesn't sell you. It just shows you can follow and find the techniques from a good tutorial. So I can see you've learned from it. You picked up what you need to. It's just not telling me anything about you. And I saw you, which is good. You tried to make your own building from this, but it doesn't. It kind of just feels like it's got stuff stamped onto it. It doesn't feel like a real place. All we have are windows. There's no door frames. There's no lower third of like storefront area, because the buildings are generally diced up into essentially rhythmic shapes because there's purposeful construction on these things. So I didn't do much of the world stuff in Spider-Man, but like there's usually like this lower third essentially is like shops, or it's walk-ups with stairs. That's a very specific style for a specific place. And there would be a door with probably like an arch over it or something like that, and then you could have a variation over here with the storefront, with a door, and then like all glass windows and an awning. That already starts to tell me more. And then the windows and upper levels would be, these trunks with breakup with probably like columns, depending on the building you're doing. Maybe some stuff between on the wall that's like a trim element. And then you'd have your final trim up here, which is the roof level, So you've got that, even though it's not modular. I saw from the wireframe. So I can tell you learned from this. It's just not selling me on you. And I do like that you did your own bent on texturing and stuff. I think that's good. Some detail to look for when you try and do real buildings. You really do need to define the sort of style and building you're doing. In this case, this is like a very Bostonian or East Coast, like.
You think this is East Coast? I thought this was like San Francisco.
This could be, but there's a style. This is like this bronze copper cladded brick. The word you'd look for is cladding. But you see even here, this brick corner. In this case, the building it has a different. It's got two different bricks, and there is a brick edge, which can be a specific part of your trim texture that is just the brick ends. And then you see there's detail like a decal, like you can do a tiling decal strip up there to give that a little grunge, and then two bricks, and you already have more unique and a turn at the corner that tells me more about how it's constructed. You could also do columns, and those would be broken up by whatever they're called, where the inner space, and there might be a special one at the top and the bottom. That's a way to turn the corner and hide these intersections. So definitely look at the stuff you're trying to build, and try to find the terms. Like this section here, it's lower detail because it's called the party wall. In this case, there's a window here that it's not because it's not connected. But buildings like this used to be connected to each other, and the shared wall is called the party wall. So when one gets torn down, there's a space there. This is not detailed because it couldn't have been. So just little things, try to look into that. Architectural books are really handy. But it doesn't have to be just buildings, there's plenty of other things you can build. So, but you're on a good path. I just need to see some environments from you, or like detailed prop sets. I want to see you can do the modularity that at a consistent texture resolution with the sort of AAA style and skill. So, look at studios, see their work from their artists, and bring yourself to that level, and you'll get there. So,
yeah, I would
and
say.
you think trim sheets and unique masks are the way to approach the building thing? Yes. Trim sheets are going to get you entirely the way there to create your modular sets. Don't be afraid to put unique elements on the trim sheets. Don't be afraid to use multiple trim sets. You should, to keep things consistent and the right pixel density. And unique masks, I usually prefer not very convoluted setups, usually like a world space tiling mask that does color change or, just, roughness differences or something like that. And it can be driven by vertex colors by painting that if you so wish. That's up to you. But I like to make sure I place elements and the uniqueness is built into them through the engine shaders, and I don't have to think about it. That's just my preference. So, yes, as modular and trim setup as you can. And put in a couple of unique elements when you get the chance, and those can be special, and they're your hero part. So.
Yeah, also just like as a general thing when it comes to your trim sheet, like dedicating some time to it a little bit more, I think will go a long way when it comes to adding some irregularity to it. It's very like you have the basis to a trim sheet set up for this project, but it's very clean, and I would love to see a little bit more cracks and details built into the normal map as well. And that can help you go pretty far with getting that detail in. And then for anybody else who's curious for information on trim sheets or painting, like vertex painting or anything like that, there's I think it's like pretty much the Bible of trim sheets from Insomniac for Sunset Overdrive, the Ultimate Trim Sheet, like GDC talk it'll give you the entire rundown of how to make trim sheets, how to use them, how to do like vertex painting stuff. So that is like a need to know for anybody who's trying to learn the trim sheet process.
I would caution on that. The technique is super flexible. It's super quick. It's great. Insomniac is moving away from it due to considerations about big game stuff, performance. But it's really fast. It's a flexible way to work. I think you should consider it. Yeah, and it will make you better at laying stuff out with trim sheets.
Yeah. Cool. So we're running out of time. There's one last thing that I wanted to say real quick on another piece that you had, is I wanted to show that this tree that you have here, where it's bifurcating, is not natural. I would definitely say that you need to take a look at some reference for trees and how they split. They almost never are going to make some sort of Y shape. They're going to never go pretty much past like an acute angle. So you want to really be careful to not bend it too far off.
Yeah.
It's going to be something that you're going to get more when it comes to root systems than it is how trees actually bifurcate when it comes to their growth patterns. So that's something that I would keep an eye on. Cool.
Yep. So I saw you put something in the chat. I'm just doing a quick little crappy sketch just to give you a little feedback. These props are not a lot to critique. They look like they could sit in an environment in an Ubisoft game and be totally fine. I would call them outsource artist level, which is not denigrating you. Those people are great. Just, they're not supposed to be heroes. These are perfectly fine. I would love to see an environment built with this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Great.
Hopefully that is all helpful.
Cool. Well then, moving to the last part that we wanted to do is we have just a little teaser video that our producer Miriam put together of the process of making the Vista shot that was in the trailer. And I just happened to have saved so many videos over the past, I guess, year and a half. I don't know. One of you is going to end up getting access to the video and seeing where my timestamps are on my computer. So I'd just love to show a video real quick of what we have and take any questions at the end, give a chance for other people to chime in. So this is just a little video that's put together. This is the concept stage, and yeah, this the concept, we had like a lot more concept for this as well, but this is probably the most accurate to what it ended up
One of the things that's
being in the end.
is,
I had to have put like around 2 months into this process or something like that. This was kind of my selling point for to be added to the Possessors team. I was like wanting to join this project so bad. It like looked like so much fun. I love the kind of grungy style, and it just kind of fit my style more than Hyperlight Breaker does. And also, I just love the more platformy kind of restriction when it comes to building out environments. It adds a lot of creativity to what you can end up developing. But yeah, the whole point of this was to kind of create that influence of the huge Vista rift and give the feel and figure out exactly the direction we wanted to go in for the feel for this game. So this was kind of our testing zone to even figure out our style for this project. So, yeah. It kind of hurts me sometimes to go back and see the really old stuff. It even hurts me to see, like, the current stuff that's in there and how many things have changed even since the last time I worked on this section of the game. We've made a lot of progress since then. But also, EE, this is a good time to start taking some questions if we have any.
Oh yeah, you can add it down. That was
Yeah, we had a rather involved question from Lucas. Find it. Alright, is there any kind of place in the video game industry and or entertainment industry for CAD precision modeling? I'm asking since it's a fairly good form of modeling, especially when it comes to hard surface things, and helps when you need to scale things exactly in comparison to one another.
I would say probably not, unless you're looking to manufacture for sets for, you know, conventions or something like that. Like, there's almost never, or like doing toy design for video game characters or anything like that, because you don't really need like watertight assets necessarily in a lot of cases. I just don't think it's probably the most common tool to use, and also probably a little bit difficult when it comes to the fact if you're working with a team or anything like that, if that's your preferred 3D modeling software that it's going to be a little bit hard to transfer it with other people, or yeah, I think it's good for maybe like car.
I
or
could
toy.
speak to this a little bit, not to cut you off, but yes, but no. If you're talking environment work, very unlikely. If you're trying to be a hard surface artist, I don't, or a concept artist who does that sort of thing, you could find an approach that way. I have a lot of hard surface gun focused people, and some of them do use Fusion, as well as a couple other tools to allow, because it allows for changes for iteration very well, and they have to do a lot of that. I don't have anything good up here, but like Fusion 360 is a thing, but it can't and should not come at the extent of your basic modeling skills. It just can't, because you're going to be required to do cleanups. You can't remesh and get something that's game ready out of these, or if you can, it's not going to be amazing. You can't texture in these in the way you need. So you have to learn your base skills before you integrate these tools into your process. And I wouldn't say they're industry wide in any sense. If you know what you're doing, you can find a way to make these work for you. But you're probably a senior at the point, or you are closer to one. So I wouldn't explore it until you are ready to do that sort of thing. So try to for everybody, try to avoid flashy new stuff. I saw a lot of people here putting in their portfolio a lot of breakdowns showing like, oh, is it like the runtime virtual textures, RVT, and Unreal, and that stuff's cool. But like, I want to see 3 really, really good, competitionally strong environment pieces right up front, right at the top. I don't really care about how you can implement RVT and texture splatting. Like, it's cool, it's good you know that. As someone who's reviewing your portfolio, I don't care. Especially as a junior, you're not doing that stuff. You're using the tools that the seniors and the tech artists are making, and you don't need to know that stuff. So don't focus so much on cool flashy tech. It's just not what you need to right now. Be a bomb ass artist, and then that will come. You can experiment on your own time. Just don't, not at the expense of your fundamental foundational skills. Believe me, I've been there. I spent a long time doing that stuff, and it stunted my growth. So I speak from experience here.
Yeah, there's a lot of like fun stuff. Like I know like a bunch of artists that do a lot of modeling in virtual reality and things like that, which is really neat and fun, but it's not exactly applicable to the industry at this point in time. And I've like watched some people try and find some use cases for it, but it's more like it seems like they're trying to shove like a square peg into a round hole when it's just not exactly usable at this point in time. But it's fun to mess with on your own time. Like there's tons of little hobbies like that, but I would use those programs for what they're meant for. Like if you want to print or anything like that, I think that is great. Like also just to add one last thing to it before we should probably move on if there's any other questions, is there's some like tools that I use just because they do it better than other ones. Like I know Blender and 3ds Max like do tubes 10 times better than Maya, and same, so I used to in college use, I think it was called Dino or something like that. It was a really old 3D software for toy design, and you would model by code, but it made the best tubes ever and spiral shapes, and I would use it just to generate those, export them as FBX, and bring them into Maya. And so you can use other tools if you think that they do a good job or better than the other program that you're using, but I would always try and see how you can implement it back to your basics, back to Maya, back to like the industry standards.
Totally.
Yeah.
Hilaire is asking the question on everyone's minds, which is, Wolf and Matt, in your opinion, who is the hottest character in Possessors?
Okay, that's an NDA question right there.
Potboy.
Yeah.
You don't know who that is, but Potboy.
Potboy's strong choice. NDA character enemy that you don't know of who has a cool robe and yeah, he's my favorite. He's got friends. He brings friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gotta be Potboy for me. Potboy love.
You'll know him when you see him.
All right. And Zarat School is asking, is Maya the true industry standard? And if so, how come?
Maya is the industry standard, though Blender is becoming more popular nowadays. When it comes to certain things, it's still the most popular when it comes to animation. For modeling, a lot of people will use Blender. It's industry standard. It's pretty built out tool that it's just a lot of work has gone into it, and also they have a lot of money, and so they basically end up just buying other companies that'll like fit certain things. Like say there's a company that has a really good like rigging tool. Then they'll end up buying that company and implementing it into their program, and so they basically just have like a monopoly based off of they had the funds to be able to build out like a really strong tool that they could purchase people's products. The thing that is meeting Blender's side, which Matt can be able to talk a little bit more on this, but the thing that's getting Blender to like a really cool level too is that they just have a really avid community, and so they go through and like make a lot of tools themselves, and there's some really cool shader stuff when it comes to Blender that I'm always jealous of, and I need to just take the time to learn it. So
True. I mean, people really do underestimate Blender. Like, it's capable of a lot of things that some people who use Maya really don't think it's capable of.
it's a great tool.
Yeah.
I need to learn it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak for experience. I had to learn Blender for my last job for a variety of reasons. When you know what you're doing, you can pick up tools quickly. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter what you work in. You shouldn't work in like some tool no one's ever heard of. That's not a good choice for you. But if you are good and you work on maps, and a studio's like, well, we work in Maya, the right answer for you is like, oh, well, I've used it a bit. Assuming you have, don't lie. Or just being like, hey, I'm really flexible. I can definitely learn this. And if they're like, well, we need you, starting on the job, then that's your cue to, maybe get your feet wet and that stuff for the next time. So it's not as important as you might think.
Also consider that not a lot of studios as much when it comes to 3D modeling, but a lot of studios when it comes there's a decent amount. I wouldn't say a lot either. A lot of them are using Unreal at this point, but there are studios that have proprietary engines, so it is a part of the job to be able to have transferable skills and learn new programs as quickly as possible. And so that is an expectation, especially the more senior you get, that, like, say, joining Insomniac or something like that, they have a proprietary engine. So going in, everybody knows that you have to learn the tool itself, and that is an expectation that you should be able to do that rather quickly.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, I know it's not much more to say to that. Also, I will say I was a Blender slanderer. I'm not gonna lie. It's made a lot of progress. It has a lot of things I don't think are industry ready, but the modeling tools are fine. The UV tools suck. I can't say that they don't, but
Yet you still use it.
I can make it work because I know what I'm doing. And you can make it work too as long as you learn it well enough. You're going to be fine. Yeah, and the job will teach you. As a junior, the job will teach you. So.
Hey, as long as you can export as FBX, I don't care what you're doing it in.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. If you export as OBJ, I will kill you.
Cool. And that is it for all the questions. And I think we're a little over time, but that's typical. Thanks, Matt and Wolf, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for everybody who's joining. And then also, like, big round of applause to everybody who got their portfolios critiqued. I know it's, like, stressful, and I hope that we gave you advice that you can be able to take on to either help you with the projects you currently have or future ones. And I wish you all the best of luck in the industry.
Yeah,
Me too. Y'all are doing great. I want to see you guys in a year, like, leveled up, and yeah, you're gonna make it. Do your best.
Feel free to message us on Discord, or at least me. Like, feel free to, message me on Discord or anything like that if you want any future critique, or if you you just have any questions around different like styles or anything like that. So I'm always happy to help give critique to people.
Yeah, totally same. I can't guarantee I will always be able to have the time, but I enjoy doing this. So.
Well, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and end stream. I appreciate everybody for coming, and we love this little community. And I promise we will put a lobster somewhere.
Oh, I'm already doing it.
Yeah, just to end the stream, can you just zoom in on that? I want this to be the last thing that you see. What do you... Crazy.